Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar, which is so important and hot topic in these days, as you know, because of the blockchain and the crypto, lots of things happening around all over the world. But also in Turkey, it's so popular concept because of the Turkey is the almost the biggest seventh country in all over the world about the crypto. So today I have lots of guests, actually 5 of them here, to talk about the building blocks for regulatory compliant crypto services. Before starting that point, I need to just give one small info about myself. I am the co-founder of the FinTech Istanbul, one of the co-founder, and also I am the head of the FinBank, which is the biggest FinTech VC company in all Turkey and in the Eastern Europe. So just trying to go to the little bit explanation about today's panel. As you know, the blockchain and the cryptocurrency have been, revolutionary phenomenon in the finance world. It has disrupted the way people store wealth, and they have created an entirely new paradigm for we trust with another. However, as these technologies become more popular, they're attracting more attention from lawmakers and also the regulators, as you know. All over the world, we have the different regulation structures that are coming out. In the last few years, the regulatory environment for cryptocurrency has been a hot topic for them. Also, the SEC from US is trying to regulate everything, while some countries ban crypto products or applications. So nobody decided yet which is the right regulation right now. So this event aims to discuss the current trends in the crypto regulation across international markets and discuss the best way to achieve regulatory compliance by properly preparing from a strategic, technological, and processual point of view. So, of course, we will focus on the Turkish market, and we will have the panel for this specific panel for this. So today we will have three different parts actually. One part is about the regulatory trends in Europe and Turkey and their business effects. So we will have two different keynote speakers for that. And also then we will go to our part second, which is the how to enable regulatory compliance, the techno-strategic view. We will have one more keynote speaker over there and who is going to focus also the case study. And the last part, we will have the panel. We will discuss and the debate about how to best prepare for incoming regulation. So then I will start to go directly the first part. We have a speaker, Dr. Thomas Nagel. So he is a managing partner of Nagel Attorneys at Law and also INATPA board member. And we have one more guest from the INATPA also. So he's going to talk about the Liechtenstein case and the current trends in international crypto regulation. He's going to give us the keynote speech. So first of all, the stage is yours, Dr. Thomas. Then we will talk.
So thank you very much. I will start my presentation. So first of all, thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for allowing me to give you the insight or a little bit of an explanation what we did in Liechtenstein. We already heard what's the topic of today's webinar, and I'm happy to guide you through what we did in Liechtenstein. For those of you who don't know what Liechtenstein is a very small country in the heart of Europe. We are bordering Switzerland and Austria. We are not a part of the European Union. That is very important to understand, but we are a part of the European Economic Area. So the harmonized financial market laws, for example, they are applicable, and we will later for sure hear more about the market in crypto assets regulation, which is there in draft. This will be applicable if not something really very unforeseen would happen also in Liechtenstein. So what I will do is I will tell you what we did here in Liechtenstein and start with the example of the Liechtenstein Blockchain Act. The Liechtenstein Blockchain Act, that's our title. It's a kind of a marketing title. It's way more easy to understand as a real title, which is TVDG. So let me start with my slides. I think you should not Do you already? Yeah, now you see it. Okay, perfect. So we started with a vision. That was the beginning. We started in 2016 here in Liechtenstein. Our prime minister started a work group to think about regulation, and we already heard about what is now happening globally. Right? You see a lot of companies starting to operate in that field. We see fundraising projects. We see exchanges. We see a lot of service providers starting in that area. And we had the same actually as a lot of countries on this planet in 2016, and we thought about how to regulate them. Right now, everybody is trying to figure out the way how to regulate these new intermediaries. On the other hand, right, there is a big risk actually that we hinder innovation in that area, and that is worth to note that in Liechtenstein, we started with a vision, and the vision was to provide the legal framework for the token economy. So not only regulating intermediaries, so for example, okay, there is a risk as we see it now, right? A lot of things are happening. You see that stable coins go to default, right? Or go to zero. We have to regulate these, right? The lawyers normally tell you bad cases make bad law. So if you react on something bad, right, normally the law is not the best. So we started with a vision and said, okay, what do we want to do? And we wanted to have the framework for the token economy, which is basically the idea of like when we digitize our economy, and that is anyway happening, I think the use of blockchain makes a lot of sense. And that's what where we started. And the crucial point was from a legal perspective. And for me, the best example here is NFTs. That's a recent development. Everybody's now talking about NFTs and that you can have like digital art, but you can also have like an NFT representing your ownership, right? So what we have is the question: okay, if you transfer a token, an NFT, if also the represented right is transferred, and that is a big challenge. That sounds very easy because everybody's telling you, that's not a big issue. I have the token, that's why I'm the owner. That might be true for the digital art, but it might not be true for the physical object, right? So we said, okay, what we want to have is enforceability of these digital transactions. And we had a look at how we actually could provide this legal certainty. And I used to code software for about 10 years. So before I became a lawyer, I coded software. We talked about, okay, like I normally tell to coders, it is like the enforcement layer. Our act is like the enforcement layer for the blockchain layer. So if you have a transaction based on a blockchain, on Ethereum, for example, you will transfer the token from address to address, and you have to have this legal framework which allows you then to have this enforceability of the claims you have. And why is that important? As I said, if you, for example, today buy an NFT which represents ownership to, for example, a valuable piece of art, let's say the Mona Lisa, to give you an example, and you want to enforce this claim, you want to really like get this piece of art hand over. You cannot go just to the Louvre and say, this is mine, that's my NFT, right? That's not going to happen, or like nobody will help you there. But if you want to have the help of the courts and our legal system, you need enforceable claims. And that is what we provide here. So we said, okay, we will provide this enforceable claims. And how do we do that? We said we start with a legal definition of the token. And I will not go into the detail of what we did and how long it took. I already mentioned that we started 2016 and what was the journey, but you can see that it took us actually until 2019. Then we had the final draft, and it's in force since 2020. Just to give you a little bit of a timeline, I think now you see that these regulatory approaches, they are way more easy in a sense, because when we started, there were no other examples, right? There were no there were some example of other jurisdictions, but they've had a very like focused area of application, and we have a very comprehensive approach. So we started with that act, which is almost 60 pages law. You can read all of that documentation, and I'm sure we can share that if someone is interested in the presentation. I'm happy to share it. You can read all of this information publicly. Even the act itself is in English. What is crucial to mention is, if you think about such a legislation, we started with the idea of having like to be as somehow technologically neutral and agnostic as possible. So that's why we tailored it in a way that the term blockchain, for example, is not used in the law itself, as DLT, for example, is also not used. So we said we are not like regulating one specific way of how to implement these digital transactions. We said, okay, there is a new phenomenon, and that's actually the heart and the core of these technologies which were developed during these years, is that you can have digital transactions without intermediary, and you can address the same risks which you normally do with intermediaries. For example, you have to trust them through technology. And that is way broader than what we see now in the form of applications. And that's why we said we want to provide the framework for, as I said, the whole token economy. And that's why we said, okay, we are not going to talk about blockchain or DLT. We also do not have a classification approach, so we don't differentiate between securities, utilities, and currencies in the law. But for sure, our regulator is also using these terms. And if something is a financial instrument, we will hear about that later, I think, as well. It still is a financial instrument if you tokenize it or not. For the lawyers or law interested between you, that's substance over form, right? It doesn't change the nature of something. But in the act itself, it was not necessary, actually, because in the end we started with a universal legal definition of a token. I think what might be interesting to understand is, and that is not also, again, not in the act itself, but I think a crucial differentiation between the kinds of token we see is the ones who are extrinsic token and the ones who are intrinsic token. Very simple to understand, and that's you will recognize now for the first time ever why I call that token container model, because it is like a container. These two braces is a container, and you can put something in, but you can also have an empty container. Then it's only the token, right? And an extrinsic token is actually a token which derives the value from an external value. Could be a stable coin, could be, as I said, the ownership token to a piece of art. It could be whatever which is actually representing some other value. Or you have empty containers, and for me, the perfect example for that is actually real, like cryptocurrencies where you don't have any claim, Bitcoin, for example. And why is that of importance, right? Because like for the intrinsic token, it's very easy. You don't need an enforcement layer, because if you have the token, you can do what you should be able to do with the token. You can transfer it or store it. Not really many more things you need to do with it. With extrinsic token, that is different, because if you buy a token which represents ownership, you want to be the owner of that right? We then, with that act, solved some key issues. We started with the legal definition of a token, and if you look at our legal definition, a lot of other jurisdictions have a similar definition of token. And I think it is sometimes I'm asked, like, if this is the better jurisdiction or the better law. I think we are still in the phase of learning from each other, and there is no such thing as the perfect regulatory environment yet, because this industry is constantly developing. I think the second really big issue we had to solve is this legal certainty based on a civil law basis, because Liechtenstein, as is Turkey, if I'm not wrong, your civil law is derived from Switzerland. But please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not an expert in Turkey. But in Liechtenstein, we have a civil law framework, as we have in most European countries, and there it is easier for example, if you want to tokenize shares, that's quite, in comparison, easy. But if you want to tokenize ownership of property, of like physical objects, that is really very challenging from a legal perspective, and that's why it took us quite some time to provide a framework for that. As I already said, the legal incorporation of uncertificated securities, that was comparatively easy to change our corporate act. That is done also, for example, in Switzerland. You have like there the possibility to issue fully digital securities from day one, and it's not limited to a specific kind. So you can have like equity, you can have bonds. That is quite flexible. And for sure, we came up with 11 service providers, like exchanges, like if you issue tokens, or if you provide specific services. Custody is another example. You can get registered with our Financial Market Authority. Coming to the core of the idea, and that's the token container model. That's the key issue we had to solve here to get these legally enforceable claims. And not a lot of people globally are talking about that. But I think we are talking about trends here now and where this is going. So a lot of other jurisdictions are now trying to solve the issue with, okay, we have to regulate exchanges. We have to somehow address the risk we have with stablecoins. But sooner or later, we will have litigation cases in front of court where someone will say, you know, I bought an NFT and they promised me that if I'm if I have the NFT, I also have like I'm the owner of this collectible, be it, for example, an old bottle of wine or a piece of art or a car or whatsoever. And then we'll come back to these questions. And I think that's why Liechtenstein here could serve as a blueprint and is actually currently serving as a blueprint for others to solve these issues, because we need legal certainty, as I said, in that respect, to being able to build upon this framework and to build our products and solutions upon a framework. So in the core, and that's it's actually very easy to understand. The idea is to have the token defined as a container, so it can be empty, as I said, but it also can represent rights. And I can tell you, like this, the start of this definition, that the token is a piece of information on a TT system, and TT system stands for Trusted Technologies. Or actually could also be trustless technologies. That's another story I can tell you in person. Why is it named like that? But it is basically just a piece of information on a blockchain system, right? Which can represent rights and is assigned to an address, basically. So that's the definition of that container we have. And then if you have the container, what you are doing is you prepare the needed functions of that container, so to speak, of the token, right? Because, for example, if you want to have a token which is representing your shareholder rights, you have to have a function in the smart contract that you can actually claim your dividends and that you can vote, right, at the General Assembly. So you have, that is just a reminder, right? Like, be prepared for the uses of this token, because a lot of, like, we saw a lot of entrepreneurs forgetting about that and then had to amend it later on. What you then do is you define an ownership, or you define a right, for example, as I said, ownership to a diamond, and then you let this token represent the right. That is how you could do, or how we do tokenization of assets here in Liechtenstein. And some will tell you, yeah, we do already tokenization of assets. That's not something very special. That might be true, but they do it in the exact same way how we did it in the old world. We actually started a company, an SPV, a special purpose vehicle, a limited company, for example, and then this company bought the piece of art, and then you actually issue the shares in the form of token. But imagine, like, you have a whole company you have to operate and run with a balance sheet and everything. It's just one step, an intermediary in between, which you don't need normally. Yeah, and then if you transfer the token, also the represented right is transferred. That's the whole idea of it. You need to have these enforceable claims. That is a crucial part. As I said, it's not limited to ownership of property. It can be almost everything. So it's very, very comprehensive and a very broad approach. As I said, on the right side, you have this kind of rights, and on the left side, you have the link to the individuals, to the identifier and the key. This is if you want to know more, I have a lot of public resources about that, but that's just in a nutshell what we did. So on one page, if you want to summarize our law on one page, it starts with the legal definition in the center. you have the standard functions of token as you have them in the securities world. Some of you might be familiar with that. You also have the relationship model. I said you have to have a link between the token and the people who are actually holding that token, who are transferring these token, and we call that representation model. The crucial part is that if you dispose over the token, also the represented right is transferred. You can use that framework for tokenization of assets. That's the key of why we did it, and that is via representation of rights. We did not touch today on the service providers. We will anyway hear more about MiCA and their service providers in MiCA later on. And some or most of these service providers are quite similar as they are in MiCA. And that is a quite interesting development, I think, for Liechtenstein and for the European area. So that was it almost from my side. I wanted to bring you the token container model a little bit closer. I wanted to give you the information that it is a civil law framework, which might be also very interested for Turkey. And the idea was to have enforceable transactions. Thank you very much for your.
Thank you very much. It's really great and to the point presentation. Thanks for that. Also, the summary page is really cool. I like it. I'm sure lots of people take a screenshot of that to see that everything is in one page. So if there is a question from the audience, we can take it right now. I'll check the chat box for that. And also, at the same time, I have a small question first. Maybe I can ask my question. So, of course, it's a good case and a good the solution, but Liechtenstein is a very small country. So you mentioned that in the beginning, but is this sample applicable for other countries? Is there any problem about scalability, or if there is a big country, do you think it's going to be a problem, or it's applicable for the others also?
I mean, it is not applicable for others because Liechtenstein has only jurisdiction about Liechtenstein. So what we do in Liechtenstein is only applicable in Liechtenstein from a law perspective, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that we were very aware of that when we started that. But we wanted to lead by a good example because we thought like this might be the right way to approach these things, right? And others, and that's what we see now, right? Others, at least, and that's my personal opinion, right? At least others cannot say there were no other examples, right? That's why I tell everybody about our example. If it's good or bad, like that's another question, right? But at least we have that example, and we get very, very good feedback. Because we were quoted in OECD reports, we were quoted in a lot of reports because we solved this issue of tokenization of assets, which a lot of people are still not thinking about, right? We are at the very, very early stage, also from a regulatory perspective. So you can say, okay, this is like, why should I even care about Liechtenstein? That is a legit question, right? The whole idea is really to get a framework, like good global frameworks, to get good global regulatory environments, that if you issue a token out of Turkey, for example, you have an equivalent framework in Liechtenstein that you get the same amount of legal certainty. So if you have a token launched in Turkey, you will forward it, you will transfer it to me, right? And I want to be sure that I am the owner, and that is our idea, right? We want to at least tell others how we did it, and hopefully get a same level of regulation, because then even if you came up with another or maybe better idea based on ours, right? I think we are more than happy to adopt to a global framework, right? But you need to start somewhere. In 2016, there was almost nothing, right? So that was a starting point.
Sure. Actually, it's a good point. You know, it's just maybe for some countries like Turkey or the other countries, it's a starting point. They can take this and they can make it for their customized for their country, their conditions, and their the consumers. So and also I have the second question. It's of course you mentioned a little bit, but it's also NFT regulation is similar with the token in the Liechtenstein, right?
Yeah, I mean that was actually a surprise for us, because when the NFT boom, so to say, like came, we thought, okay, that is interesting, but we thought about that 2018 and 2019, right? We wanted to provide this legal certainty. Now we have this hype about NFTs, and I have a lot of stories I can tell, and I think everybody has these stories, right? Where people are buying NFTs, which are even not digital art; they're just digital copies of something, right? And then they tell you, yeah, you are the owner of something, and in the end, like as a lawyer, I know, okay, you have no claim at all in the end, right? That you have like that's going to be a very hard position to represent in front of court. So we said, people were asking us after this act is in force since January 2020. They said, yeah, but now you have to amend your act for NFTs, and for the first time we could explain no, because with our definition of a token, NFTs are covered. And the main, what you need out of a legal framework is this enforceable claims, even for NFTs, that is covered, right? So I think that was the first proof that the act is technologically neutral. It's agnostic to technology, and it's agnostic to the way or to the kind of tokens we have. And I think that was one of the really good signs for us that we are on the right path, right?
Yeah. So we can say that it's good for all digital assets, all the digital securities, all of them.
The digital securities is another topic because that we also covered, but that's another webinar.
I know. That's why I just passed it very fastly. I don't want to lose all the time. So, Dr. Thank you very much for your attendance. Actually, do you want to add something in the last sentences?
I would love to hear from Dimitri if we get the final version of MeConnect Thursday or not.
So it's his part right now. He's going to be our keynote speaker after you. We can let him to talk about that also. Great. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we are now passing to our second keynote speaker. As I mentioned, we will focus on how the international crypto exchanges adapt to the new regulatory requirements. Of course, we have lots of different crypto-based business models, but the exchange is the biggest ones. So that's the really important topic for us to hear from Dimitrios Psarakis, if I say it the right way. So he's the head of the European Affairs Financial Strategy side. Also, he is the X-Reg consultancy. And also same with our first speaker, he's coming from the INATPA Working Group chair, actually. Maybe I didn't mention the last previous speaker. INATPA is International Association for Trusted Blockchain Application, if there's somebody doesn't know that. So welcome to our webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. So I'll leave you the stage to listen to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here in this very interesting and very stressful day, because today we have a moment of decision in the European Union. We have the conclusion of the transfer of funds regulation in applications. The transfer of funds regulation is the transposition of ATAF recommendations to the European Union law. And tomorrow is also a very stressful day because we have the adoption of the markets in crypto assets regulation. As you can imagine, in the last few days, we do not sleep. A lot of horse trading takes place between the Council, the European Commission, and the European Parliament. But we hope that today we will have the conclusion of the transfer of funds regulation, and by tomorrow we will have the European Union's regulation on crypto assets. You see, it's a moment of decision, and
I have small warning. I guess your internet is a little bit slow because of that voices changing. Do you aware of that?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you, but the voice is moving because of maybe the microphone or the internet. I'm not sure. Can you check anything or maybe make it closer to you?
Okay, let me devise something here.
Sure.
Now, how it sounds right now?
It's better, and you can increase your volume, okay, which is great for us.
Now?
Okay, just speak a little bit louder, then it's okay.
Louder, okay, I will speak louder. Okay, thank you. So, of decision today and tomorrow.
Not hear you anymore. And
may I suggest to proceed to the next speaker and try to connect through a different device?
sure. As I see, we have a problem with the Dimitrios, then I will directly pass to the part two. I'm sorry, keynote speaker, third one, which is from our country, Burcu Hanım, Burcu Tümer. If she is available, oh, great. Thank you very much, Burcu Hanım.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to our panel. So, sorry for the change, but we will directly pass to you. So we will talk, we will listen to from the Burcu Hanım, the Turkish market, the status quo and the regulatory outlook. She is the founding partner of TBL Legal. So thanks for coming and joining to the changing to the keynote speech, the second one. The stage is yours. Please keep going.
No problem. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very happy to be a part of this event together with the valuable speakers. Today, I will try to summarize you the current legal situation in Turkey in respect to the cryptocurrencies. But before start, I would like to emphasize the importance of building a bridge between new technologies and legal requirements. Well, as we all know, we have been witnessing an important digital transformation since 2008 due to the emerging new technologies. The said transformation not only reshapes social and individual needs, but also leads to the emergence of new business models. If we look at the relationship between technology and law in general, we may say that the law follows technology. For this reason, in order to prevent legal controversial situations, it is necessary to establish the protective law rules correctly and also to take necessary precautions in order to identify the cases where the traditional law doesn't meet technological needs or creates gray areas. As today's webinar is called Building Blocks Regulatory Compliant Crypto Assets, before going into details about the recent legal situation in Turkey, I would like to say that as attorneys, we always must take into consideration the traditional law to create a bridge between the technological needs and legislative infrastructure by considering the new rules and principles to be applied for new products and services. For example, when we speak about a new technological development, even though there is a new law or regulation to be applied, we also must conduct evaluations in the fields of corporate law, competition law, or civil law, or intellectual property law, and so on. What does this mean? The use of the said technology, for example, does the new development of a new software constitute unfair competition? What kind of protective measures should be taken in order to, in terms of the intellectual property, how the rights and obligations between the stakeholders should be regulated in a multi-stakeholder platform should be evaluated. But apart from these, if we are talking about the technology related to regulated sectors, for example, it can be a product to be used in the health or banking sector, or as today's topic is cryptocurrencies, it is necessary to make additional evaluations within the scope of the relevant legislation as well, in order to determine the licensing requirements and to contact with the relevant public institutions or organizations in case there are gray areas in the legislation. And when we come to the crypto assets, although Bitcoin is a widely used and known brand today, a lot has changed since the manifesto in 2009 that introduced crypto money. And after cryptocurrencies, the concept of crypto assets entered our lives, and accordingly, conceptual confusion began to occur. For this reason, it is important to identify applicable law together with the missing points to assist our clients in a better way. I assume that today's speakers will be pointing out the main regulations in EU in respect to crypto regulations which have been published by the European Commission. Thomas just mentioned MiCA a few seconds ago, and or Digital Operational Resilience Act, so-called DORA, that have both been introduced in 2020. So my panel will be limited to the Turkish legislation only, and I will try to briefly summarize the current situation in Turkey. So crypto assets were firstly defined in Turkish legislation by the Regulation on the Non-Use of Crypto Assets in Payments, which was published on April 2021. Regulation defined crypto assets as intangible assets that are created virtually using distributed ledger technology or a similar technology and distributed over digital networks, but are not qualified as electronic money, payment instruments, securities, or other capital market instruments. By this regulation, Central Bank of Turkey prohibited the use of crypto assets as a payment instrument in legal transactions. However, none of his articles relates to the trading in crypto assets. But when the regulation was first introduced, there has been a confusion in the market. Some people thought that trading crypto assets was banned via this regulation. However, in fact, the regulation prohibited the use and providing services for the usage of crypto assets directly or indirectly in payments was prohibited only. In addition, development by payment service providers of business models enabling the use of crypto assets directly or indirectly in the provision of payment services and electronic money issuance, and also provision by payment service providers of any services related to such business models were banned. Following this regulation, crypto asset service providers have been regulated as obliged party under the regulation on measures regarding the prevention of laundering proceeds of crime and financing of terrorism on 1st of May 2021. As we know, one of the biggest concerns of the legislator and the states regarding crypto assets is actually money laundering and financing terrorism activities. But with this amendment dated May 2021 that I just mentioned, crypto asset service providers have been included in the scope of obliged parties, which means that they became obliged to make identification and report suspicious transactions when necessary to Financial Crimes Investigation Board, as we call it as MASAK. At the same time, they became subject to MASAK inspections. In case of a breach of obligations, judicial and administrative fines could be imposed. In parallel to this amendment, on May 2021, the Financial Crimes Investigation Board, MASAK, has published a guide on the fundamental principles for the obligations of crypto asset service providers to prevent the laundering of proceeds from crime and terrorist financing activities, which is now applicable to crypto asset service providers as well, as I just mentioned. The guide for crypto asset service providers had 5 main obligations actually. First one is customer identification, reporting suspicious transactions. Third one is providing information and documents. Fourth one is constantly providing information. And the last one is retention and submission of documents. As this guide was referring to reporting suspicious transactions, another guide has published on April 2022 in respect to suspicious transaction reportings for crypto asset service providers. Basically, the guide regulates how suspicious transaction notifications should be made, notification periods to be followed, details on notification forms, and procedures and principles regarding such suspicious transaction reporting. Well, the guideline, I may say that the guideline further explains the sections of the form in detail, quite in detail, and defines the categories and types of suspicion, as well as the types related to customer profile, transactions, crypto asset service providers, and persons suspected. I may say that the guide is prepared and published quite in detail, so all of the rules and procedures to be applicable to the obliged parties have been defined very clearly. But apart from this, at the end of December 2021, draft law on crypto assets came out, which intends to amend the capital markets law by making definition of crypto asset related concepts such as crypto asset trading platforms, crypto asset custodian, and crypto asset service providers. As far as we see, Capital Market Board is intended to be authorized for determining the crypto assets to be traded on the platforms, to regulate termination of trading, to dispose over the crypto assets for which trading has been terminated, and to allow crypto platforms and service providers to operate. However, The draft law or any related law has not been adopted yet in Turkey, but an evaluation report has been published as a result of the crypto asset draft workshop, which was held on February 2022 in Ankara. But on the other hand, I also would like to briefly summarize Turkey's standing point in respect to the taxation of cryptocurrencies as well. I must underline the fact that OECD's recently published report, which was published on March 2022, in respect to the crypto assets reporting framework and reporting standards, will be an indicative approach for Turkey as well. As we know, while there are already accepted legal regulations regarding crypto assets in some EU countries or other countries, supranational organizations such as OECD or IMF emphasize the importance of having a uniform crypto asset regulation in order to minimize the audit and enforcement risks. For this reason, cross-border coordination is important for establishing a supranational control mechanism. Since cryptocurrencies are an important potential income for our country, studies on taxation have also been accelerated, and discussions on the nature and taxation of cryptocurrencies still continue in Turkey, as in many countries, and it is necessary to determine the subject of earnings in order to identify which tax should be applied for the earnings from cryptocurrencies or crypto assets. In this context, some people describe cryptocurrencies as securities while others describe as commodities or money. However, as I said previously, the taxation process is still a gray area in Turkey, and I believe that it is crucial to follow EU's approach when conducting a legal analysis on the taxation processes. So that's all from my side for now. I tried to briefly provide you the general framework in Turkey in respect to the crypto assets and currencies. I believe that the next steps that will be taken for the regulatory requirements would be very crucial for Turkey as well as the foreign investors. But I believe that if we manage to reflect the market's needs into the legislative infrastructure, Turkey's crypto asset market will be highly impacted in a positive way.
Thank you. Thank you for good explanation. Very well prepared. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Actually, I have some questions for you. Also, we have questions from the audience, but we will be at the panel together. So I'll just keep my questions to the panel to directly ask you. If
Okay,
it's
sure.
okay for you. It's okay? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. Now we are going back to the, also thanks for the joining very fastly.
No problem.
We are going back to the Dimitrios. Welcome back. And it's your stage. But I'll ask for that. Can you start from the beginning, which is better?
I will start from the beginning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's clear. It's clear.
Oh my God! Apologies for this inconvenience. So
No problem.
let me start from the beginning. Today and tomorrow are two very, very important days for the European Union because today we agree on the transfer of funds regulation, which is about the transposition of FATF recommendations on crypto assets to the European Union law. And we expect to have a decision today. And tomorrow we have the last trialogue meeting, the meeting between the Commission, the Parliament, and the Council on deciding the markets in crypto assets regulation. So it's not next week, it's today and tomorrow. So as you can imagine, it's a little bit stressful day here in Brussels. And tomorrow we expect similar agitation because it's a moment of decision. And you see that Liechtenstein had its own moment of decision. Turkey has already in place a regulatory framework that is to be adopted soon, which means that Turkey has also had a moment of decision. And you see it all over the world that this very innovative technology, which affects the way we treat and transfer value, as well as the way we organize entities, has shaped the markets, regulators, and regulatory approaches all over the world. And sometimes people ask me if there is something new about blockchain technology. Of course, there are a lot of new things because blockchain affects business models, operational models, and profitability models. But it is not necessary to invent new economics or to not look back to the history to see if we had similar moments of bold decision making. And I want to drive you a little bit back to 1835, where in England, with many similarities to our era, we had back then the Crimean War, and a prime minister in UK, Palmerston, who didn't want to be remembered as the prime minister who lost the Crimean War. So he decided to bring on board and give legality to a really innovative financial structure. They called this limited liability company. And back then, nobody wanted limited liability companies because it was associated historically with significant frauds. And everybody was against it. The economists were against it. Adam Smith was vocal against limited liability companies. John Stuart Mill was against limited liability companies. The church was against it. The poor were against it. The rich were against it. And if you wanted to make a company, you had to get a permission from the House of Commons. This was a really tricky situation. And at this moment, Palmerston took the responsibility and said, okay, everything seems to be against limited liability company, but I will address the problem. I will give it legal certainty. I will allow this innovative organization to take place within the mainstream economy, and I will take care of it. And you know, since then, we had many cases of malfunction companies, but in the 95%, this innovation worked and brought prosperity. And we hope that these innovative business models we have in front of us right now will not be very different in the years to come. What we need is a Palmerston moment. And you see that different countries have different Palmerston moments in adopting this innovation into their jurisdictions. And to create a bridge between what Thomas said earlier about the regulatory approach of Liechtenstein, I want to make a note here. The original blockchain resolution of the European Parliament that it was introduced in 2017, and I had the honor to draft and negotiate while I was official of the European Union, provides an understanding similar to the one of Liechtenstein. You know, regulators usually want to step on certain roads and certain bridges. So what the most regulatory authorities did is to take the token, identify its characteristics, and if it looked like a security, then lazily they would apply a securities law. If it would be a utility token, it would be a consumer protection law, and so on and so forth. In the blockchain resolution of the European Parliament, we said tokens are tokens. You need a comprehensive framework for tokens in order to save your time and save your concerns when you have an innovative token out there that the regulator didn't manage to envisage in the very beginning. And you see now we have NFTs, which is just one case of the 1 million cases of different tokens that are going to come in the future, and everybody is shocked. Do we regulate it correctly in the European Union? Or we need to adapt into a new regulatory framework? You see, Liechtenstein solved this problem. They have a bespoke regime for tokens, and they follow it consistently, irrespectively of the uses and irrespectively of the characteristics of the token. Unfortunately, the European Union didn't follow the recommendations of the European Parliament, and we have Commission introducing the Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation, which effectively is organized in 5 parts. The first part is about what we call today utility tokens, tokens that are not payment tokens and are not security tokens. We have a title on tokens that are a reference to a basket of assets. which is the asset reference tokens, stable coins denominated or deriving their value from a basket of other financial assets. We have e-money tokens, where it's about tokens pegged to a fiat currency. And we also have a regulation that describes the activities of the crypto asset service providers, CASPs. This is what we know as VASPs in the FATF recommendations. And of course, the last title is about how we regulate this standard going to be adopted by the market. This is a very clear question for everybody, because obviously Liechtenstein has its own thing, Europe has its own thing, Turkey has its own thing, United States its own thing, and so on and so forth. In a really global market, we need to have a common understanding of how to regulate these things. Unfortunately, we are not there yet, and for all the exchanges and all the issuers of tokens, this is the main trouble that actually feeds lawyers and value chains, not necessarily directly related to what the business people would like to do. How it affects the crypto exchanges. They need to adapt their business models. They need to adapt their operational models. They need to adapt to their profitability models. Because in the end of the day, it's not just MiCA. If you are a CASP in the European Union, as very well the colleague from Turkey mentioned elsewhere, you are also liable under the regulation related to the resilience of your operations, which is the DORA. We also have the environmental protection and your environmental fingerprint as it is defined by taxonomy. We also have another dimension which is related to the anti-money laundering provisions within the European Union that are not necessarily coincide with the ones in FATF recommendations. And these major topics cannot be ignored by the players of the market who want to enter the European Union market, which is a 450 million, almost $500 million market. So I am afraid that we are not there yet in having a global solution on crypto assets, and this fragmentation, this regulatory fragmentation, is going to affect the business models of the entities. Can we say that the Brussels effect can put in motion? Brussels effect is this soft power that European Union has to regulate something, terrify everybody else, and make them follow its example. Brussels effect, for example, is the famous GDPR. We adopted this data protection regulation, and immediately everybody was panicked and wanted to have a similar approach to the European Union. This is an example of Brussels effect. Can we see a Brussels effect in the case of the European Union? The time is about to tell us. And I also look to the other side of the Atlantic to see how much of what we are deciding today and tomorrow into the European Union in Brussels is going to be an example of what Washington, D.C. is going to do. What's next? Having the regulation adopted, it takes 2 months, 1 to 2 months to translate it into the languages of the member states. And then we have a period that we draft the level 2 regulation, which is all about the functioning and the small details on operational model, on where you are allowed to invest your reserves if you are an issuer of a money token or an asset reference token, how the CASPs are going to obtain their authorization and licensing, and so on and so forth. How, of course, also what kind of details you need to have onto the white papers, when the CASP is allowed to admit for trading a certain token, and so on and so forth. All the details are going to be there. I remember in the negotiations of MiFID, when they were concluded, for the 200 pages regulation, we had one. I'm afraid we are going to have something similar in the case of MiCA. This, on the one hand, brings clarity on how we interpret the regulation. On the other hand, it's very difficult to makes us very difficult to predict how this is going to affect the market structure, because it turns out that only he who can pay the lawyers can actually have access to the European market. I'm afraid that this may end up in a market structure with considerably less participants than the 786 CASPs we now have recorded in the European Union. I see, because of crypto winter and the regulatory impact, a further consolidation of the market. And I am afraid that this builds also to the already existing network effects that platform economics create in order to concentrate the power to small number of winners. So this is all from the European Union for the time being. I really welcome the initiatives of Turkey and other countries in the neighborhood of the European Union. A little note about taxation, because also the colleague mentioned it before. We are on the way of introducing the DAC8, the Directive for Administrative Cooperation number 8, which is about the reporting of the taxable revenues of crypto assets. This is an initiative now on the way, and we expect the text to be introduced in September, following, of course, the lines of OECD. Kind reminder, the taxation in European Union is a national authority, national competency, but the reporting standards are going to be determined by DAC8. So I expect further collaboration with the colleagues from Liechtenstein and Turkey in the future months. So that's all from my side for the time being. I'm looking forward for your questions and the conversation later.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, actually, and also thanks for the invite for collaboration, do something together. So as I mentioned in the Burju, we will have a panel together, so I'll just keep the questions in the panel side to fit with the timing, if it's possible for you. Okay, thank
Absolutely.
you. So we'll deep dive during the panel, okay? Thanks for presentation again. So now I'm going passing to the part 2, actually. We will have a keynote speaker from the Riddle and Code. We will learn about the company also from the CEO of the John Callion. So let's invite him to the stage right now. I guess, okay, John is here. Hi, John. Thanks for coming. Yeah, hello. So we will listen from John, actually, where's the market heading and which are the key trends. But of course, in this part, we will focus on more techno-strategic view of this compliance, regulatory compliances. So we will have the John, and then we will go to the little bit detail with the product manager of the Riddle and Code about the systems. So John, is this your stage? After your presentation, I have questions for you because we will not be in the panel with you. Okay, let's stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. Thank you for everybody who's joined and is listening in. I'm John Callion, the CEO of Riddle and Code. It's an Austrian-based company, though I actually sit in Berlin, which is a place full of crypto enthusiasts, or crypto natives, as we say. As you may know, a lot of the hardcore developers on Ethereum and Polkadot and IOTA live in Berlin, so it's a very vibrant community. Riddle and Code is around 5, maybe 6 years old, and we focus on onboarding industry to Web3. What that means in practicality is we work with large industrial companies to add industrial machines to blockchains. And we do that via a hardware wallet, a cryptographically secure element that acts as a hardware wallet that marries industrial machines with blockchains. And for 5 years, we've worked on a variety of projects with a variety of companies, including Daimler Trucks, BMW, Veen Energy, BASF, and a host of other companies. And again, the idea is to help them build systems that has decentralized infrastructure. And where it meets this discussion is when we talk about using decentralized infrastructure for onboarding machines, the value of those machines is represented by tokens. So if you can imagine a solar power plant being tokenized, i.e. issuing a certain amount of tokens to represent the economic value of that solar power plant, which in this case might equal 1 token equals a kilowatt hour of energy. And by doing this, you're creating a microeconomy around industrial machines through tokenization. So this is what the company is focused on in a variety of ways. We have products and services. And this year, we'll also be launching our very own blockchain called the Riddle Network that will be consisting of the very machines I'm speaking of. So you can imagine millions of machines one day powering their own blockchain, holding their own data, and proving their own usefulness. So that's what we're into at Riddle & Code. And certainly, if you have any questions about that in the follow-up, would be happy to answer. And you'll hear from a few of my colleagues today as well. I've been asked to talk a little bit about market trends. And I myself am not very technical by nature. You would consider me more on the business and product side. So please consider that as I give my talk. I do indeed spend a lot of time studying the overall market. I tend to follow along with the cryptocurrency market, the pricing, the trends, and of course, the big news of the last few weeks or the last year about different firms that have been hacked into their wallets or the bridging systems or the behind the scenes asset trading going on that has resulted in some collapsed companies. So I'll touch on that a little bit. And then also address the younger generations who are becoming financially educated. They're entering into a global system where tokens and crypto is now part of the conversation, which it wasn't when I was younger. Certainly, I've learned a lot over the last few years about crypto, but there's still more to learn for everybody. And so to launch into it, we are, more than 10 years into Bitcoin being in existence. I think it's closer to 13 or 14 years without being too precise. And we've surpassed $1 trillion in value in Bitcoin and other systems, which is quite amazing. And certainly proof that crypto is here to stay, in my opinion. But again, compared to all other financial systems, it's actually a very small amount. So we are really at the beginning of this era. It may not seem like it if you are on Twitter or you follow a lot of articles and blogs in the mainstream media, but we truly are at the beginning here. And we've seen in the last 2 years in particular, decentralized finance or DeFi take the stage. And when we talk about people's education, we talk about the scams that are happening. Most of that is in what we think of as the DeFi space. So for the younger generations, the millennials, and of course the Generation Z, the educational learning curve is probably more open and probably more well accepted than people of my age, and Generation X, and of course older. So, a suggestion for everybody listening here is, spend more time to research all these things. And before we get into the details of how some of the hacks and scams have affected the market and the trends that we see, I will definitely ask everybody to consider how much research they do before they get involved in anything cryptocurrency related. There is a wealth of blogs and documents and of course videos, whether they be on YouTube, and many channels you can join in Discord and Telegram to learn. So the big suggestion here is to continue learning as much as you can if this is a space you really want to be in. So today, I believe there's well over 20,000 different token projects, and it's probably only 5, 10, maybe up 20% of them that are really legitimate in terms of being projects that will last a long time. And of course, we consider ourselves to be one of those. So besides education on cryptocurrencies, another trend is suddenly everybody's becoming an economist and giving their opinions on not only their local economies, but global economies, and how the economic mechanisms that have been powering, various global economies since the Industrial Revolution are now being bombarded with this idea of decentralization and tokens and cryptocurrencies, and how are they changing things. And an area of focus for myself and for our company and our partners is getting into microeconomies, token-based economies. We have conviction that the world is moving towards a place where all industries will operate within token-powered microeconomies. And it's super exciting to us. And as I've explained earlier, we are bringing industrial machines and their utility to the token world, which is quite unique. If you have spent some time studying the different types of tokens and the assets that supply their value, most of it is very digital by nature and doesn't have something solid behind it, like an industrial machine, a solar power plant, a wind turbine, a fleet of electric vehicles, and of course the electric powered generators that you need to power your electric vehicles. This is the world we see with all of these machines being tokenized and interoperable. So interoperable token economies is where we feel the whole world is marching towards. Some of it will be industrialized, some of it will be the current DeFi systems that we're all getting comfortable using, and some will be ideas of tokenizations we haven't even thought of yet. Now, of course, attached to this is the NFT marketplace. And an NFT, though represented by art in some way, shape, or form, or communities, are also another form of decentralized finance. We now have the opportunity to trade value through the NFT marketplaces as well. So overall, it's a very exciting time. We really are at the beginning, and don't hesitate to ask questions and learn about this entire marketplace. And one of the critical parts to learning is to really understand, if you read about a scam or a hack, this many millions disappearing, this is part of the education you need to give yourself. And more specifically, for those of you who haven't gotten yet involved, or some of you who haven't done all the research, really understand what it means to be a wallet holder and to create cryptographic keys and to understand their relationships to blockchains. Because it's part of this system of individuals interacting with their wallet, which holds their cryptographic keys, which are the mechanism to sign contracts. And those contracts are held in blockchains, and often they are involved in the bridging of different blockchains and their tokens. And these bridges are held externally to the blockchains. And this is where a lot of the hacking and scams takes place. I'm not really capable to get into more detail on how all of that operates during this call, but certainly we can address a few questions on this. So needless to say, these are some of the topics here to... Yep, please.
Okay, I jump in. Thanks for the motivational speech also. Actually, we are at the same page with you, because I believe that it's the right time to enter the market, because it's now starting to be structured again, and it's the right time. So I have two different questions first. One of them is, of course, how it's a little bit challenging questions. You explain it, but a little bit maybe you can talk about that. How can the average person understand what is a scam and what is the legitimate project worth investing in? Is there any tips about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So where I would start is if there's a project I'm interested in, meaning there's a token that I, for some reason, am interested in investing in, I would start with the team and their website and their social presence. And I would do some research there. Do they have a website present? Does the name look legitimate? And you can do your own research on the domain names and who they're associated with. And I mean, this is easily accessible by doing Google searching, of course, but that's where I would start my path. Then I would go into reading the contracts that I would be interacting with before I make.
Well, something happened. We lost John, I guess. Hi, yeah, we lost you in 10 seconds at most.
For me, I was here the whole time, but it's no problem.
You just say that it's easy to look from the Google, but it's the starting point of you, the name, and
the starting point is just doing I would say a more basic search of domain names, websites, look at the people involved, find them on LinkedIn, find them on Twitter, and do your research there. The more difficult part of the research is everything you do with tokens are governed by smart contracts. And all smart contracts should be 100% transparent and open to anybody to read through them, to understand it. Because often when the scams happen, you are signing with your wallet and corresponding keys on a contract that's not legitimate. That's one place that your tokens, your non-fungible or NFT tokens can be taken. So understanding the interactions between the wallet you have, whether it's on your phone or on your browser, really try to understand that the smart contract signing that you're doing. And then lastly, I would say the most obvious thing here is if it seems too good to be true, it's probably not true.
Good one. So all the tips you gave us right now is really valuable, and also important part is useful. Sometimes some tips are not useful, you know. The second question from my part is, you know, what's going on this cycle? The value of the token has dropped considerably, you know, 2-3 days, so a little bit increased today, but it's still going down again. So what do you think about that?
Sure. And I will preface this by saying this is my own opinion. Has nothing to do with
that's
nothing to do
I'm
with
sure everybody's aware of that, you know,
Yeah.
in this business.
Yeah. So I think there's multiple reasons why the values of the tokens are at where they're at today. First and primarily, it's still a very new concept. And there is a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt to the crypto world and also the Bitcoin world. Meaning it's highly volatile. If you look at the full 14 years of Bitcoin, it's been going up and then down, up and then down, up and then down, but overall up. I mean, Bitcoin started at fractions of a penny and is now around 20,000 US dollars, which is not only amazing, but it's the most highly increased asset, one of the few in history. However, if you start scaling into the more recent times, not only is there a natural volatility that I just mentioned, but there are macroeconomic conditions now that are affecting all markets. You know, the oil market is highly affected right now.
Sure.
Good for some people, not good for most consumers. The stock market in the US and Europe and in Asia, also highly affected, as is the crypto market, which you can almost see in tandem. And these macro factors are, of course, in my opinion, again, the Russian war of aggression in the Ukraine is maybe the number one chief reason why global markets are being affected, because it provides so much uncertainty. And for those of you who don't study macroeconomics, and because we all need to become a little bit of an economist, understanding the trends of macro effects is really important. War is almost never good for stock markets and markets in general, until people start to understand it's going to end and the good times can roll again. Two, there is global inflation, and inflation has a massive domino effect all the way down to consumer pricing. So this is another thing to understand. So now you have two major factors that are making people very conservative and making them spend less, and hence they pull their investment money out of markets. And by that very nature, everything gets deflated. I have 1,000% conviction that these markets will all go back up, and Bitcoin will go back up over 100,000 one day. I won't tell you my prediction when. Probably not this year, but I definitely intend by September, maybe a little later, to start seeing it trend up. I think it'll hover around this 20,000 for a while.
Good. Okay. Yeah. Actually, I'm at the same side also. I believe that it's going to be, a wrap up again. But as you say, all the markets has a problem right now. It's not just for the crypto. People focus on the crypto side, but it's not about crypto. So the last question for you from my side: what does the future of tokens look like for you and the Riddle code? It's going to be something that's changed, or from my side, it's going to be a more use case oriented, or what do you think?
I believe we will see a very similar trend to the very early days of the .com era. The crypto era, if we want to call it that, or the Web3 era.
Sure.
There's a new technology driving a gold rush mentality into a new market. And during those early days, a lot of people are rushing into this market trying to create projects and extract value out. And only a minority of those projects are going to make it. This is a normal cycle for any time a technology changes things. And before the internet age, when the .coms came, there was the PC age, which, Apple and Microsoft are still living and breathing, and two of the world's most valuable companies, by the way. But for those of you who weren't around, there were dozens of other hardware manufacturers,
sure,
including IBM, for instance, which no longer makes any international business machines. So what we're seeing, in my opinion, a natural shakeout of things, but the strong companies, the ones built to last, are going to get bigger and stronger over time. And we're going to see more, I would say, industrial uses of the technology, banking uses of the technology, and into retail in a variety of use cases. So yes, I agree with you. We'll see more retail-specific blockchains and protocols emerging. But all of this means, as I stated earlier, a world in which token economies are everywhere, and they're interlinked. And we use a term called atomic swapping, which means there will be automated market makers swapping tokens constantly on the behalf of people and machines and any type of system, companies. So we see a world of interoperable tokens and blockchains and protocols and atomic swapping. And the ultimate conclusion here is about the ultra liquidity that will eventually take place. Everything can be liquefied, if you think of it that way, and represented by token value.
Cool. Really good. Actually, it's a good estimation, I guess. But as you said, this liquidation side, it's an important part. Make it easy and the use case and retail-based solutions, and also which you mentioned about the swap side and the algorithms, the market making, which is really important. Thank you very much, John, for attending and giving the inspiring speech. Thanks for your talk. We are happy to listen to you. Now, I would like to invite one of your colleagues.
That sounds good. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Feel free to find me you can find me on Twitter.
Sure.
Under Sideshow John.
Okay, we'll do it. Thank you very much.
Ciao.
Yeah. Enes.
Hello.
Ernest Turk is the product manager of in the Riddle and Code. So we're gonna talk with him about case study, how to develop future-proof systematic capabilities around custody. So let the stage to the NS. After the NS speech, I have some questions for him, but first of all, we need to listen to you, NS.
Thank you. Thank you. So, hello, everybody. My name is Ernest Turk, and I work as a product manager for Riddle and Code FinTech Solutions. Some of you may remember me from my former role at BKM, the Interbank Card Center, where I was working in the heart of payment systems in collaboration with banking and the FinTech ecosystem in Turkey. As someone who has the taste of both worlds and considered as a technical person, I really enjoy spending time and finding answers with legal experts. So, like the beginning of each solution, I started to write down questions to narrow down the problem between the whole blockchain technology and the regulations and started to work on finding the answers. All in all, regulatory compliance in Web3 has become a main objective for me. And that is why I joined Riddle & Co team, and together we worked on finding and implementing those answers into a product. So today I'll be guiding you through my questions and how we found answers to all that with the TMP. So we are working in an emerging and maturing market. Hopefully you will find this session very fruitful and helpful. So let's start with the problems around the custody. What are the main hurdles to tackle today? Like every institution and entity in the digital asset ecosystem is facing a similar challenge. How to protect and store their digital assets, secure them against misuse or theft, and still be able to work with them. Each currency and network offers a diverse set of features and ways to operate with them. At the same time, the funds are being juggled to this day between hot and cold wallets by the most participants, and there is no real standardized way to define rules and policies to protect assets on multiple chains and networks. This means a myriad of attack vectors and complexities that create higher costs and prevent scalability. On the top of the operational challenges and the ever-changing ways to networks work, every participant of this ecosystem is facing regulatory investigation and needs to find a way to follow the upcoming regulation regimes such as MiCA, AML, and auditability. All these are ranging from the need to segregating customer funds in a secure way to being able to prove that the ownership of funds and to use audited and certified infrastructure service and providers. So when we look at the current market, as the previous speakers have told a lot about, as you know, until recently in Turkey, several rules have been published by the government regarding the cryptocurrencies. And a short time ago, there have been talks between the authorities and the market players on the drafted bill. So according to these updates, there's a huge potential of a new market for banks and fintechs to become custodians inside this regulated environment. And this same process is happening all around the world right now. So stepping into this new playground, considering the technical and regulatory requirements, a custody product has to satisfy three critical areas. One, composability within the infrastructure. The second one is transparency for auditability. And the third one is risk liability for malicious actions, which are pretty common these days. And all these three must be addressed according to the current regulations like GDPR, AML, and CTF. So on this page, you can see how we designed our key features to become a future-proof custody solution. Starting from the secure hardware devices to banking-grade confidential computing, and also completing the compliance necessities such as audits and licenses, and adding composable business logic into our product. Moreover, we are an ecosystem player and collaborating with important actors within the ecosystem. Lastly, keeping our foundation secure and flexible to keep our feature-ready nature all the time. So first, we can concentrate on the infrastructure and start with the secure hardware devices that are customer built in Austria. So these devices are the keys for the operators to access the custody software and acting as a signing approval device and coming with built-in disaster recovery. Moving on, following the approval devices, we have the deployment options for the infrastructure, which we provide both options. They are as a service and on-premise, because deployment flexibility has been a must-have feature for countries such as Turkey and India, which has strict rules about having the payment system infrastructures within the borders of the country. Last but not least, providing the paperwork and process support in becoming regulated or adhering to existing regulations is vital for technology provider. So obtaining an ISO 27001 certificate and being audited by the Big Four, in our case, it's Deloitte, it can be considered as another must-have on the infrastructure side. So we've covered the important topics for the infrastructure level. So the second important aspect is the transparency. The ultimate goal of a regulatory compliant solution is to become an auditable one. And this transparency gives you that. In this slide, you can see Riddle & Co's source of truth, the audit ledger. As you can understand it from its name, everything that happens inside the TMP is also stored on another layer called audit ledger. With this new layer of blockchain, regulatory parties and the auditors are able to track the whole lifecycle and the history. And it also can be easily shared via APIs in case of necessity. And speaking of the auditability, TMP is audited and accepted by Swiss regulator FINMA, and also obtained a license as a service provider for virtual and cryptographic tokens by Austrian Financial Market Authority, FMA. To clarify the FMA's role, it's an equivalent for BDDK in Turkey. So I mentioned earlier that we need to take the current regulations into consideration. As we are storing the logs on a different layer, GDPR compliance comes into play here. So it is no secret that GDPR has always been a hard case to solve in distributed ledger technologies. So in TMP, we are using segregated accounts, which allows you to give 8-digit hexadecimal IDs, both to your asset holders and the trusted recipients inside your system. The last topic we are focusing is the risk liability. And I want to divide this section into two. First is to mitigate the operational risks and creating business logic for efficiency. And the second one is the crypto forensics. Here you can see some policy rules that can be applied to a custody business. Since it's a highly delicate process, we wanted to mitigate the risk by allowing entities to build their own secure way to operate. We needed an engine that helps an entity with creating a business model via flexible rules and governance modules and cannot be manipulated. We brought our policy layer into action and let our clients design their business logic with human readable programs. To give a simple example, you can formulate any transaction valued greater than 1 Bitcoin must have quorum of 3 approvals. As our customers have different requirements, we kept elaborating our list of policy rules within time. So another crucial topic is for the risk liability is being able to identify and analyze the malicious actions. We are all aware that entities must check their assets if they are coming from legit sources. Thus, it can be proved that you are the only handling legal coins. This will help those entities when it comes to complying rules such as AML, CTF, travel rules, source of funds, proof of ownership, and etc. So as a result, Riddle & Co is collaborating with a leading crypto forensics entity, CoinFirm. And CoinFirm's AML KYC service is integrated into TMP. and the risk scores of each transaction are stored on our audit ledger. So to sum up all the future-proof aspects of the TMP, so let's take a look at the high-level architecture and the components. It's a unified token management platform for all digital asset types, hosted on a confidential computing infrastructure powered by Intel SGX, dedicated approval devices and wallets, and trusted execution environment at the core, and human-readable policies to govern all aspects of a transaction. And we are able to share API to the third-party ecosystem players. So, putting all the aspects together, we believe regulatory compliance guarantees that companies do well within the scope of the law, especially for the market that is dynamic. Moving parts must be operating in harmony. It can help avoid disciplinary actions for the entities, mostly resulting with a loss in reputation, customers, financial gains, and license revocations. It assesses financial health and avoids steep penalties associated with non-compliance. It will help mitigate risks such as data losses and security breaches. And due to the structured environment, entities can create streamlined business processes, and which will eventually increase the efficiency. So Riddle & Code understands the need for regulatory compliance, so we always ensure that our products, such as the token management platform, are compliant. So yeah, I would like to thank you all for listening to me and walking together through our journey to build a future-proof, regulatory compliant custody solution.
Thank you very much. It's really a clear presentation in this, and so to the point. Nothing
Thank
is,
you.
So detailed. It's to the point. It's very cool. Thank you very much. Just I have one simple question for you. Then I will go to directly the panel. So, if you want to give a recommendation to the companies, which one to use blockchain solutions, what are you going to give as a recommendation for them? Of course, I'm asking from the comply of the regulation part also. But if you want to give some advice to them, to the companies, what can you give?
Sure. Well, I would like to answer this with your passion, since you like to explain things in three aspects. So first one, I think they should really focus on their core business model, since in Web3 world, you can easily build new things and they can create some revenue streams for you, but the core business will be always the same. So they should really spend time on deciding that. And the second is analyzing the regulations in their own countries or the market. So they should focus and work closely with their regulatory parties, with their legal teams. And the third part and the last part should be choosing the technology, which is the most compatible for the local market. So this is the three ways to go into business in Web3.
Thank you. Thanks making it in three, because I always say that if it's more than three, nobody remembers it. So thank you very much for that. Thanks for your presentation again. Now we'll directly go to the panel. So I would like to invite my panelists, which we know before our keynote speech, Dimitrios and Burcu Hanım. And also we have one more panel speaker, Sebastian Becker. He's from the Riddle and Code again. He's a CCO. Welcome. And I guess we are missing one of our panelists. I can see that, but no problem. I will keep going because we have a time issue. So this panel, we will talk about how to prepare for incoming regulation. It's like a debate, but I have different questions for all our panelists. So, okay. He's here again. Welcome on stage. So, actually, of course, I would like to start with a woman from the ritual. So, Burcu Hanım, you explained very well about the situation in Turkey. Now, I'm going to ask you, what's your expectation, not for today, for expectation of regarding the crypto assets regulations in Turkey? Do you expect change? We know that something is happening right now, but every time they say next month, reach the elections 2023. But I'm not asking about the dates, but the type of the regulation we are waiting for, and also maybe you can say something is generally about the crypto base in crypto assets in Turkey, how it's going to be handled.
Yes, sure. Well, due to the cryptocurrency's rapidly increasing popularity, governments are making greater efforts to regulate crypto markets, and the anonymity of crypto asset transactions and the risk of money laundering and financially supporting terrorism activities by using crypto assets have led Turkish authorities to take a number of measures, as I mentioned during my panel, such as Turkish Central Bank's recent regulation banning the use of crypto assets in payment, or Masak's investigation authority, etc. But given the independent, decentralized, and uncontrolled nature of cryptocurrencies, it seems that it will take some time to define the legal nature of these assets and determine the framework of legislation to regulate these assets. Of course, I'm not only referring to cryptocurrencies here, but also other technologies that we are currently working on, such as NFTs, DeFi, GameFi, or even Metaverse. Considering the fact that those are all attached to one another, and it is important to have a bird eye view on them to identify the missing points. But if I return back to crypto assets, we are expecting the draft law on crypto assets to be published in near future. I don't know when, but in near future, which will be an indicative step for Turkish market and will lead to indicative changes in crypto sector. We all know that even though the Turkish legislation for crypto asset has not been properly defined or regulated yet, Turkish users are very active, and if we manage to clearly identify the strategic and regulatory needs, this will be a good opportunity for foreign investors too. Of course, this will not be only limited to cryptocurrencies, but also other crypto assets such as NFTs. However, we always must take into consideration that recent changes and updates in EU and try to create a uniformed infrastructure by profiting from other countries' market experiences and the problems that have been encountered up to present. I also must add that the taxation point would be very crucial for future opportunities too. And we know that in the last months, relevant authorities have announced that they are also working on the taxation issues in order to eliminate gray areas in the sector. However, in order to be able to clearly define the taxation principles, as I mentioned earlier, cryptocurrency types must be defined, must be clearly identified and classified first, and it is crucial to follow EU's approach, specifically OECD or IMF, when conducting a legal analysis on the taxation processes too.
Yes, thank you very much for your clean explanation. So I directly go to our new speaker, Sebastian. Welcome our stage again. My first question for you, so it's a different question actually from the others. Which are new and interesting other areas for tokenization beyond cryptocurrencies and NFTs? Do you have any things to say that?
Yeah, sure. So thank you for having me here and also for the question. I think John mentioned a few, let's say, very broad potential applications like the ones we are going to focus on, connecting machines to the blockchain, and also use our banking grade and certified technology, the token management platform that Ines has referred to bring this together, because industrial players that want to get active in the token economy, they also need banking grade and regulatory compliant tech solutions. So either they build them up in-house, or they team up with banks or CASPs to manage tokens. So that's certainly one area. Equip the industry regardless of their activities or their products. But then with the, let's say, atomic swapping capabilities of tokens, I think a very hot topic will to use the incentive functions that tokens are in the end, and to use the incentive or game theoretic steering capabilities to drive the journey towards carbon neutrality for all our economies or countries or markets. because just making announcements alone will not be enough. We will need to use tokens as incentive mechanisms in different industries with very different regulatory, security, and other aspects to bring both business-to-business relations and business-to-consumer behavior, let's say, closer to that carbon neutrality. So I think everything related to green sustainability will boom in the next couple of years. And as part of the blockchain market problems we have right now, educating the markets about trust, and that's compliant with the Liechtenstein law, bringing two trust technologies to the market, be very transparent about the backgrounds of a project, and then surely we will see different tokens in the mobility sector, in the energy markets, in the retail sector even, to fly. And we should not forget, technically speaking, if we talk about the systemic level, it's about managing private keys. So whenever in the next phase of, let's say, governmental action, we will see digital and programmable money hitting the different markets. Technologically, it doesn't really make a difference if we handle tokens or programmable money. We will have to prepare for these opportunities and technical basic systems that will help us to program our business processes.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much for your answer. So, Dimitrios, I have a question about what are some of the benefits adapting the Nft regulations to the good side?
Starting from the basic, you are allowed to operate. Otherwise, you are illegal. So, yes, the idea of having a regulation is exactly to ensure market integrity, ensure investor protection, and ensure systemic stability, and of course allow this innovation to scale up faster, because in an environment that nobody knows what to expect and nobody has a source of information from an independent source, nobody wants to get himself attached to this. You remember, of course, please.
No, keep going.
You remember the time of ICOs. You really didn't know what to expect. You didn't have a way to evaluate this. Suddenly you had to be a little bit venture capitalist, a little bit guru of technology, a little bit of economist. This is not good for a lay person. And we need to have in place some sort of certainty in order that people to trust and go and put their money in.
So what are difficulties?
Difficulties, of course, are related to how welcoming a regulatory framework is and how easy to be implemented. For example, in my contribution, I mentioned the problem of having 1,000 pages of delegated acts, which means that you get something like that. You are not a technologist. You are a technologist. You are maybe an economist, and you need suddenly to explain crazy things in order just to allocate what kind of liabilities are related to you. And you see it especially in the case of decentralized finance. When something wrong happens, we have an incident of market failure. Who is liable? The coder, the person who administers the function, and how you find him out there. And this is in the crux of the main problem we have with the markets in crypto assets regulation in the European Union. And if I have something to say to the colleague from Turkey, to Burcu, don't make our mistake. Because suddenly we found ourselves with Christine Lagarde, the head of ECB, saying, wonderful MiCA 1, but you need a MiCA 2 now, because you didn't address in MiCA 1 the interconnectivity of crypto assets market with the banking sector and the financial sector as we know it. You don't touch the idea of lending in crypto assets and staking, because now that we have crypto assets, somebody in the mainstream, somebody can lend in crypto assets. And also there is the dimension of the collateral. This is an asset, so I can use it as a collateral for another transaction.
Sure.
All these items are things that are going to provide certainty into the market, and at the end of the day end up to the correct price, because from $0, €0 to 100,000 euros, all the prices of Bitcoin are wrong.
Oh, yeah, cool. So going back to the Burcu'nun, your second question, what are the issues that need attention or that you think are important for the ecosystem and for everybody, actually, for the environment?
Well, the most important point would be not to frighten the foreign or local investors, because it's a growing sector now and cryptocurrencies will lead to different opportunities in near future. For this reason, the law or secondary legislation should be enacted by taking into consideration the EU and other countries' approaches. But I also see that these new technological changes as Noah's Ark. So every support function, as software developers, coders, marketing persons, or lawyers, must be sitting on the same table to listen and understand the needs from each other. But if I come to the expected law on crypto assets, in a nutshell, I may say that the law must clearly define the official authorities, rights, and principles, and the principles to be applied to the obliged parties must be defined clearly, and the relationship between different stakeholders must be taken into consideration, or even maybe the agreements that will be executed between these stakeholders. I mean, the clauses must be defined that should be included in the agreements, and the guides should be published by the relevant authority for providing detailed information. But also the requirements when creating a board of directors should be specified. For example, the criteria to be applied when assigning a person to the board of director, the minimum requirements for their background, etc., should be defined, or how many persons should be there in a board of director, how long should be their assignment, etc. But also the compliance program, including an educative sessions and reporting requirements, should be specified similarly to other financial institutions that are given by the banking legislation. So those are the main points that came up to my mind when considering the must-have points in the future legislation.
Thank you very much. So going back to Sebastian. So Sebastian, you mentioned about the programmable money, digital money, also industrial utility tokens. So what are the difference between these two, the industrial utility token and programmable money in the end? Are these only different regulatory categories, or do you want to say something more? You are mute right now. You are mute.
Very true. Even after 2 years, you're still mute sometimes. Yeah.
Sure.
So of course the jury is still out if it comes to digital bank currencies, but of course we can expect digital money to take place pretty much everywhere, because China is now leading the field with their large-scale trial, and everybody else is investigating. In the end, the main difference is clear. Digital currencies issued by either central banks or private banks are under the rule of the different markets and their authorities. So that for sure will result in, let's say, a limited availability of programmability versus utility tokens, where basically smart contracts, if they are agreed by the consortium or the parties involved, can be established. So it's clear that the limits or the playing field will be smaller for central bank digital currencies or digital currencies in general. But the systemic backend, as I said, requires then the same functionality and the same capabilities as, let's say, custody solutions now for the digital asset space. And so that means everybody has to upgrade themselves, and it's a little bit like 1997. It's totally clear the internet is going to come, and some companies embrace it and others take 10 or 15 or 20 years longer. And of course, you can still do business with a fax machine today, but it's maybe not recommended.
Sure.
So that's certainly one thing. And then, of course, utility tokens can really try to find and offer the best solution to specific use cases in different industries. We mentioned mobility and energy sectors, for example. there's a sector coupling between the two because of upcoming charging requirements and grid balancing requirements for electric vehicles. But of course, they also have their very sector-specific use cases. And that means we will hopefully use a lot of tokens to find the best market and economical solution for balancing different problems, I would say.
So just adding your question, so different one. What kind of assets or business objectives should companies have to be able to benefit from tokenization? Can you give us some examples or some ideas for the companies that are listening to us right now?
Yeah, sure. So, for example, supply chain is an obvious field where efficiencies can take place, and many European initiatives or programs that are based on blockchain technology are also trying to solve that or adopt blockchain technology to it. But it's clear wherever we are using machines to decide about certain, I don't know, temperature points or location stamps, etc., there we can almost reach 100% transparency, because if we use crypto chips and if we build a wallet into a machine, then we can basically transfer that data, an audited data signed by a machine, to the blockchain. Wherever we have human interference, be it in agriculture or in supply chains, there's still room, of course, for errors. So manual data entry will be a problem still in the future. And also, of course, bad actors that try to cheat. But it's very important for our overall economic system to be as transparent and as compliant as possible, because we see the outside world is crazy enough. We have a former US president that might be a terrorist. We have other presidents attacking neighboring countries. So if we want to survive as a planet and as societies, we for sure have to make sure that at least 90% of our business processes run not only in a compliant fashion, but in an efficient fashion. Otherwise, we run out of energy, out of commodities, and out of future, basically.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, Dimitrios, if you give a recommendation to our regulatory bodies or legal institutions, what can be your recommendations to summary?
So before answering to this, may I jump in and say something on what Sebastian noted a while ago for the businesses? Starting from encryption, all the way to intermediation, all the way to decentralization, there is a continuum in which every different company should choose an optimal position over there. What determines where you have exactly to place yourself in this continuum is directly related to transaction costs and verification costs. You don't need to blockchain everything. You don't need to, it's not a solution that solves every problem. You need to find yourself over there. And this guarantees operational efficiency, cost efficiency, and most important, scalability of your own business. So your place in the continuum plays one role, and the second is the blend of the technologies play one role here, because artificial intelligence is close to this. Quantum computing, when we have it, will be associated to this. The structure of the data governance is going to be absolutely related to this, because it's different to have your data in cloud and different to have them in an intensive Internet of Things environment in an edge computing governance setting. So all these factors matter. And before understanding how to regulate all this new market and all this innovative
Oh, we lost him again.
He just wanted to say something important, and now we lost the conclusion. Yeah.
Maybe our government canceled it.
Yeah, no, but he's certainly right. You know, companies and also nation states need to identify where they are on the value chain, and what does it mean for not only their regulation but also their strategic business decision. And of course, Turkey as a very big economy and between Europe and Asia will play a very important role here. And we all know that economics also need good governance and let's say future-proofness. So let's hope that tomorrow's, let's say, adoption of MiCA, whatever the details in the paragraphs will be, will hopefully lead, and that's my expectation, that big companies, not in the banking sector because there is existing regulation, but in the industrial sector, they've been doing a lot of pilot projects and MVPs, but there was no legal certainty for the introduction of utility tokens. And just the fact that now we will have MiCA regulation and we will have something on paper will lead to projects that have not been in the public domain to become public relatively soon. And this will hopefully then trigger a new wave of optimism and growth for the segment.
Thanks for jumping in and secured the answer. So, Burcanım, the last question for you, not just for your old panel, actually. Just thinking about all our panels and the keynote speakers and your knowledge, your experience, what's your recommendations, if you give some recommendations for our ecosystem and the regulation bodies also?
Yeah, as I said during my panel, actually, we shouldn't be only looking from the cryptocurrency side, but also must consider other parts of the law as well, like corporate law, or since we are also speaking about a regulated sector, we must look at the secondary legislation, etc. And we always must be in communication with the relevant authorities to define the gray areas and also to understand each other's needs and think about how to implement those changes in the current legislation. But also data protection will be another problem for us too. So the secondary amendments will come up to this point as well. And also competition law will be taken into consideration. So those are the main points. As I said, all of these new technologies are attached to one another. So we should be having a bird eye to identify the needs on the sector and act accordingly together with all of the relevant shareholders on the same table.
Thank you very much. So useful. Actually, for myself, I learned lots of things. It's a really valuable 2 hours for me. And thank you very much. Like doing it on the time, I can see from the live site, we are in the 1 hour, 57 minutes. So we just promised for 2 hours. So we are on time. So thank you for our panelists and the keynote speakers. They spent really good time for us and so valuable informations. And also thanks for the Riddle and the Code make us to happen it. We will put it in the YouTube. And most of the people is watching them in the nights and the Saturday and the Sunday, the weekend. So maybe we'll keep going to taking questions about that. Some questions from the YouTube side. We will let you see what's going to happen. Thanks for joining and thanks for the listening to the audience. Hope to see you again in the different webinar. Thanks for supporting the Turkey also.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's ask Dimitrios to send his last half sentence in the comments and chat box.
Yeah, sure. Which is the better.
Again, it was a pleasure.